everybody. Welcome to the Waterloo Region EVA podcast for Electrifying News. We are, in March now, the 23rd of March. We're into spring. Welcome everyone to spring, thank goodness. But yeah, we've got some interesting news articles for you tonight. Let me first introduce my co-hosts. I have Mr. Ian Graham joining us from downtown Kitchener. How are you today, sir?
Happy to see the snow go away. And happy to see some sunshine and this is past 7 o'clock at night and I can look outside and there's still sunlight. It's awesome.
Exactly.
Get the vitamin D.
Very good. Yep. Looking forward to better weather as we move along. Also joining us, my other co-host, Mr. Eric Stevens from Listowel. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Mark. Enjoying now seeing the rambunctious Cobra chickens, otherwise known as Canada geese, out and about and chasing cars in our parking lot and stuff like that too. So it's all good.
Actually, there was a video online just this week of a gentleman trying to help a family of Canada geese get across a road, and the mother goose got upset that he was getting a little bit too close to the chicks, so it attacked him. Oh. So there he is rolling around on the ground as the geese is attacking him. He was trying to get them across the road, but that's always fun.
Nothing like seducing you in and get
you a little closer. Everything's good, and then attack.
Yeah.
It was all part of a plan. There was attack.
Probably.
Does he still have his wallet?
I didn't see that in the video. Well,
if you guys have seen the show Narcos, Of course, it started off with Pablo Escobar in Colombia and then it went to Narcos Mexico. I always thought we should do a Narcos Canada, and it's just Canada geese in the park, harassing people in the park, harassing squirrels as well, and
stealing wallets.
Yeah, and stealing wallets, just like getting their territory.
Well, let's get to the electrifying news this month. Ian, start up the slideshow, please.
All right. So we're seeing this okay?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so the first thing on our, gotta scroll up here, it's a little different actually, is years of decline. The auto industry in Canada is making a comeback. And the big thing about this, I kind of was interested, I was reading about this, is the fact that we are one of the largest car producers in North America. And a lot of people, I don't think, realize that, how many jobs we actually have in Canada that involve manufacturing of cars. And we've got some pretty exciting news to talk about this sort of the comeback.
Exactly. And the comeback is all basically due to electric vehicles. So we've had a huge amount of investment from multiple companies that are buying up manufacturing space, planning on building factories, promising to build new lines of vehicles, and also parts manufacturers that are putting together parts that go into these EVs. Batteries, drivetrains, motors, minerals, of course, coming from Northern Ontario and Quebec, being fed into the supply chain to feed these new EVs. We have been seeing this for some time now. This has been happening now, I would say, for the last year and a half. We've been noticing large investment announcements coming from our government, the provincial, the federal, from companies talking about what they're doing. Windsor just got awarded recently a large battery installment from Stellantis. So this is something that has been brewing for some time, and we've been incrementally adding up these others that are coming to the table and looking for the ability to set up shop here in Ontario. And it's a big boon to the province. It's getting larger too as we go along. And of course, a lot of this is related to the IRA in the United States, where they're offering a large vehicle incentive of up to $7,500 as a tax write-off off of people's purchase of an electric vehicle. And if those vehicles have a certain percentage that are made in North America, through parts and through the assembly, then they qualify. If they don't, then that $7,500 does not qualify for a certain brand or manufacturer. And of course, that puts them at odds with others that do qualify. So you've got a lot of companies like VW and others that are looking to qualify for that $7,500 because it's a 10-year term for this incentive that's being offered, and they don't want to be locked out of it for 10 years because they know it's going to affect their bottom line because of their sales. Mm-hmm. So this is affecting Canada in a great way, and with our connection with the United States, it has been, the Auto Pack, and of course the new free trade agreement. It has solidified that we're involved with this, and we're really able to get a benefit out of this based on what we've been seeing now for, again, about a year and a half. So congratulations. I think Ontario's economy is going to prosper from this, and many cities like St. Thomas, like Windsor, Oakville, and others are going to definitely benefit more as time goes along, because it hasn't stopped. There are just more and more companies that are lining up to shore up manufacturing in Ontario, or I'm sorry, well, in Canada, the United States, or Mexico. They're looking for these different. They're trying to shore up how much they need to lock in with manufacturing in one of these three countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, one of the things I'll add to that too, Mark, is, a lot of things that people don't know is that Ontario is also home to a huge automotive supplier base as well too. There's a number of major corporations here in Ontario that make automotive parts, big and small. Companies like Linamar and Magna and Continental, Michelin, they all have operations and facilities here in Ontario as well too. And we also have a massive amount of automation experience. Companies like ATS Automation out of Cambridge and stuff like that do a lot of work for automotive manufacturers to help put up and set up production lines. And there's a massive amount of expertise there that's hard to replicate in other locations. So with the issues with supply chain that automotive manufacturers have faced since COVID-19, they're now looking for more reliable supply chain partners to do that. And they've seen Ontario as a stable environment to produce automotive parts in a consistent manner. So that has really helped Ontario as well too. And of course, vehicle electrification, it just goes hand in hand in this region as well. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, overall, it's amazing. It's not just a car manufacturer, like you mentioned, ATS, and all these little small aspects of that chain that are going to be impacted. And of course, economically, Mark, as you mentioned as well, that this is, I think, going to help Ontario prosper as well with this. And it's affecting communities. And, the job aspect especially is just amazing. So that being said, GM is also, and this is interesting. This is story number 1 of 2 with, a Saint something or other town. So this one's St Catharines that we're dealing with here. And Eric, I'll let you talk a little bit about this with GM.
Yeah, so this is an interesting story because in this case, General Motors has existing operations in St Catharines today that makes traditionally gas engines and transmissions for combustion vehicles. But now they've announced that they're going to be making a big investment into St Catharines to now start building electric vehicle drivetrains in this location as well too. So it makes sense. And there's always that big story that's saying EVs are going to take away jobs. But now we're seeing that we're just converting some of those jobs that were before making combustion powertrains to now making EV powertrains. So here we see in St. Catharines, GM is committed to making powertrains for at least 400,000 EVs a year, possibly, in fact, most likely even more than that. And St. Catharines is one of their big powertrain operations. And it's good to see them making that investment here in Canada as well, too, because they have another operation just across the border in Tonawanda, New York, as well, too, making gas powertrains. And I haven't heard that noise there yet. So it's good to see that General Motors is making that investment here in Ontario, and it's promising.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned, it's good to see that the transition is happening. So it's not just jobs that are lost or displaced. These are jobs that will continue. They may have different employees working different things, and of course there may be some retraining to go in. But certainly there's a wealth of expertise that could be shared amongst the different platforms, and hopefully they will go be up and beyond that 400,000 that they've committed to per year.
Yep, for sure. So from St. Catharines to St. Thomas, my not quite my stomping grounds. I grew up just outside of London, but I did spend some time in St. Thomas. So this is really interesting as well, to see that we got Volkswagen coming in and doing some batteries here as well.
Yeah, so St. Thomas is a town that, it has been a poster child for sort of the automotive decline in Ontario over the last 20 years. They used to have a Ford factory that built the Ford Crown Victorias and the Lincoln town cars and the Mercury Grand Marquis. And then they had the Sterling truck plant there for a long time as well, too. And both of those facilities had closed a number of years ago. And that's partially the reason why Volkswagen actually chose St. Thomas for its location. If you see some of the stories there, part of that is because there is quite a bit of inherent expertise that's there, and they're looking for manpower. They're looking for people who know how to do this stuff, and they're looking for people who have the resources available to make this stuff. So that was part of the reason why they selected St. Thomas for this location. Also being centrally located helps as well too, and of course being in Ontario, part of the the incentives from the U.S. government and stuff as well too. This gets Volkswagen in on building batteries locally in North America, and this is their first battery production facility outside of Europe, and they've chosen Canada for that. So I think that's a big deal as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great news. And again, it's more fuel to the fire here that's going to actually promote our region to others. Because when other manufacturers are looking to set up shop, they typically look at what the competition is doing and where their suppliers are setting up. And this can entice more to come to Ontario because they're in the same geographical areas as their suppliers and others, and it makes the supply chain easier for everybody.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. Speaking of more possibilities of, I guess you could say, happenings with electric vehicles, but in this case, scooters and bikes, and in this case, in our local area of the Waterloo region. And this is a bike share that they're hoping to launch for the summer. And now, there's a couple of things about this that I find interesting. This isn't the first time that this has been tried. This is actually the third time that this has been tried in terms of, like, there was Lime, and then there was another group. But you know what? I went to up by U of W, University of Waterloo. They had the Lime bikes up there, and I got the app, and I got on the scooter, and I had a hoot. It was a lot of fun, going around in it. And of course, up there's the pathways that they have for the bikes and everything else. And now the other thing that kind of I find interesting about this, I came about in the article, is the study did warn that the program wouldn't on its own make a big dent in emissions unless it's well promoted, tied into other programs and incentives. And that is something that, myself, I've been kind of saying to the region and our cities, is that the cycling aspect is great, but how much of a dent it's really making into emissions, I don't really feel that it is making much of a dent, because I feel it's actually causing, to a certain point, more emissions with the idling of cars that can't turn right on reds because of the bike lanes, the ion. But also, we used to have a lot of left-hand turn lanes, which now, because of the bike pass, are now making cars single file, and if somebody's turning left, you're going to be waiting there. So the emissions part of it, I think they need to do a little more work on that aspect of it. But that being said, one other small problem that kind of came up was that when they did the Lime bikes, sometimes the bikes were kind of left in the pathways. It wasn't really set up in a way that the community felt like you could put the bike back where it was supposed to be. And people were kind of like going around the bikes and they were left behind, and some very odd locations and that. So hopefully something like that will be kind of fixed up as well. But other than that, like I do look forward that they can get this going, because the scooter, man, that was the first time I've ever been on one of those, and they were a hoot, a lot of fun. So I wish them luck on that.
This pilot project is going to open up, I understand, by the end of April. They're going to start it. And what's going to be different than from the past attempts, as Ian had mentioned, is that there plan to be some designated corrals where the vehicle needs to be when you're done using it. Otherwise, your credit card continues to be charged. So you can't just leave the vehicle at the side of the pathway. You have to get it to one of these corrals, which is going to be geofenced, so that they know that the device is in that corral, and therefore your credit card stops being dinged. And they'll have a few of these different corrals across the cities. And of course, they're going to allow you to drive the pathways that are around the city, like the Iron Horse Trail and the others around. And also, a change was made to the Ontario Vehicle Code that these vehicles are now able to drive on roads in the city if the road is 50 kilometers or less. Another change to the program is that riders are going to be required to wear a helmet no matter what age you are. I don't know how they're going to handle that with the rental of a vehicle. That's going to be interesting to see, because of course, if you're renting one, you probably don't have a helmet in the first place. But that's something that they're saying, to drive on the road, you need a helmet. Maybe it's different if you're driving on a pathway. Maybe that's not the same regulation. But I got this information from someone in the city that said that this is going to start at near the end of April, and they're going to be both providing the scooters and bikes. So there's going to be both, and I'm interested to see how it works. As Ian said, I took one out for a spin when Lime first came to town, and I had a blast driving on one. I can't say I did it again, but I did try it out. But I know that I've talked to some locals in my neighborhood, and a couple of them have said that, you know what, if I could take a scooter from this area and go to my job downtown, I would do it for 9 months out of the 12, or maybe 7 months out of the 12, depending on the weather. But they're interested to see as to, how far these corrals go out and where they could pick one up. So it's something that we'll have to see. It's obviously, this is not the whole solution for reducing traffic, but this is just a little piece of it. And if you start getting people used to being able to access this type of transportation, I would think that over time it becomes a thing that will grow. If you provide it in the beginning, when it's a novel idea, that's wonderful. You'll get a few early adopters. But over time, with all the condos and small and large apartments going up on the spine of the LRT, I think a number of people could probably park their car for the majority of the year if they were to have their own scooter. And maybe, of course, the price tag of buying one yourself between $600 and $1,200 would be something that would be comparable. So, but you have to start somewhere, and I think that's what the city is trying to do. Let's put it out there. Let's get people used to the concept and the idea and traffic sharing, and see if it can work in our city.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Ian, those idling cars, we have to convince them to drive electric, and then those emissions will go away.
It's all part of it.
But I would say personally, too, one of the experiences I've seen, too, is that there's been a number of times where I've traveled to other towns for conferences and whatnot, and you're in the downtown area for a conference, and then you're like, well, I want to go out and explore the town a little bit. It'd be nice to have one of these little scooters to go around and do that. So even people who are from out of town who didn't want to rent a car or didn't have a vehicle available to them, this would be a nice option for that as well, too. It would be interesting to see, I've seen quite a few of these companies come up and then go away too. Hopefully there's a lot of lessons learned here, and hopefully we can find a sustainable business model for this as well too, that it keeps going and we can make it work this time.
Yeah. A couple of Mondays ago, I went to Toronto for a Leafs game. They lost. Anyways, I was noticing all the bikes and the bike sharing that they do there. And, it's pretty incredible with Toronto, what they've done that way. So, like I said, I would like to see that here. I wish them well and success in all this. All right. This is exciting news for just Canada. And this makes so much sense. Is the possibility of Canada Post going fully electric. I think we've all seen the hybrid vehicles. Even yesterday, I saw the Canada Post hybrid vehicle. But now that they're doing a test of the 14 electric vehicle vans, and they're hoping for 14,000 by 2040, is awesome. And of course, I love how they're also are tying this into, of course, BC's got a great hydroelectric aspect of it. And the other thing about this as well, and of course, if we go back to GM with their Bright Drop vehicles, some of the routes are 100 kilometers. So, it'll be interesting to see if Canada Post will try some different vehicles, just like we saw with the police. They've got the Ford Lightning, the Model Y, etc. And if Canada Post might try a few different things this way, especially with the 100-kilometer routes, which, quite honestly, with Bright Drop vans, is not going to be a big deal.
Yeah. So. Yeah, this is the first 14 vans that are going to Canada Post. As you mentioned, Ian, this is a no-brainer. These are fixed routes for the most part that are known, and they can get vehicles for them. Canada Post, it looks like it's planning to electrify its entire fleet by 2040, 14,000 vehicles. It said, last year, Canada Post set aside $1 billion to move forward with this plan to do this. So it's good to see that they're doing this. It looks like here they're using a converted Ford Transit van, which is a good option for some of these routes as well too. And I also wonder the plastic cladding on that, if they've tested those for Canada Geese as well too, to see how well they protect the mailman for that. So.
No, that's great to see. I hope that Canada Post does sit back a little bit. Let's get some vans into it. Let's try them on these set routes. But for the longer routes that are coming, I know that these Ford Transit vehicles will get longer range as time goes along. If we've seen anything, we've noticed that from the first and second and third generation of these EVs that are out here now, they all benefit from the initial tests, and we see manufacturers adding a little bit larger batteries or a little bit better technology that allows them to get more range too. So I think that over time, these are just the first iterations of these vehicles, and the second and third generations will certainly bring us more range as well. So that'll be a plus for Canada Post.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As the fleet planners get to use these vehicles and see how much, because they put some numbers down, they have some estimates of what how they're going to do and how they're going to save. But then once they actually get these in their fleet and see how they operate, then they're going to get a little bit more comfortable about getting more into the fleet faster.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think Canada Post should do a commercial and kind of mix, Hey, Mr. Postman song with the Electric Avenue and sort of like mash those up. I could see something like that. And
you got a studio, so you can get right on that.
I got to get right on it. Yes, exactly. Signed, sealed, delivered. I'm yours. Yeah, there's an idea. I got to work on that and then present it to them. All right. Now, this is an article that is interesting because we know there are different networks. We have the Tesla charging network. We have the Electrify Canada, Electrify America. We have ChargePoint. We have Ivy, Flow. Now, and of course, we have heard of like some of the gas oil companies are also kind of doing like Petro-Canada, their charge network. And now 7-Eleven, which, you know, it's kind of like, there you go. There's the 7-Eleven, then we got the Couche-Tard aspect of things. I find it really interesting how these companies are like sort of like not working together with other companies, are just going to go and do it themselves. They already got the franchises set up. 7-Eleven, of course, you know, 13,000 stores in the US and Canada. And it's like, you know what? We're not going to sell electricity. And we got the spot in our parking lot, and we're going to set it up, and we're just going to do it ourselves and control it ourselves. So it's an interesting, you know, how business is changing in that respect, because it's not just saying, you know, reaching out to ChargePoint and saying, hey, do you want to put your stuff into our parking lots, and then you worry about it, and we'll work out a, you know, a deal that way. These guys are just doing it, and I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so 7-Eleven here, starting their own network, basically 7Charge. They've got quite a few locations, and I think I've even discussed with Mark in the past. You know, why doesn't a company do this? You know, something like this, because, you know, and 7-Eleven has even mentioned this now. They want to turn their locations as a destination where people want to spend a little bit of time. So when they actually show up and they have to charge for, you know, 20 or 30 minutes or something like that, they actually have a place where they can grab a bite to eat or coffee, use the washroom, stuff like that. So now you're creating a whole ecosystem around charging now and actually taking a break and during traveling and things like that. So to me, this is a no-brainer. And 7-Eleven's already got, you know, huge number, you know, 13,000 stores in the US and Canada. So they have a lot of potential locations where this makes a lot of sense. So
I think this is a symptom of what people are actually seeing coming, because this is another company that like Max or how do you say
Couche-Tard.
They have seen Circle K. They've seen that this is coming, and they see it happening in Europe. And now they're pushing. They're looking at North America and saying, you know what, it's coming. The number of cars that are electric that are being sold to the public is increasing. We don't see it stopping. We see it just continuing to increase. So all these other companies are kind of reaching out and trying to get their slice of the electric pie, because they believe that it's going to be a mover in the future. And this is great to see. This is just more of the electrification moving quicker and quicker and becoming more and more mainstream to the Canadian population. You start seeing these things at travel centers. You start seeing them at grocery stores. You start seeing them, in this case, a convenience store. People start to ask questions. Why is there so many electric chargers going up all around my route? Maybe I should look into an electric vehicle. There are tax incentives available. They run cheaper. There's less maintenance, and this pushing people along the way to getting an electric vehicle as well. So it's a plus on both sides. Companies get to draw people into their location to spend a few extra minutes there, and on top of it, they're pushing the electrification of the country faster and faster.
Yeah, Mark, you're having problems between Couche-Tard?
Yeah, I'm not going to bother. I'm going to call it Circle K from this point forward, guys. It's all it's going to be called, known to me.
Yeah, St. Hubert's going to put these in now, and, you know, get charged with our chicken and while your car charges or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, it's funny. The other thing, too, it just kind of hit me when you mentioned like grocery stores, because, of course, Zehrs in Kitchener on Strasbourg has now not just level 2 chargers. They actually have level 3. And a recent family get together, you know, one of the family members has just gotten a Volkswagen ID4 and came down just north of Newmarket and charged there for 20 minutes and $8, $9, and got more than enough to get back home. But there you go. It's like you go grocery shopping and you can get a full charge. The other one that came to my mind was Canadian Tire. How many more Canadian Tires are we seeing that have the flow chargers now as well? Yeah. And, you know, so yeah, this is now, and one other quick thing to this point, it's been an interesting week with our local newspaper because of the opinion pieces, you know, put in where the second opinion piece that went in was the person saying, nah, the only vehicle you should be getting is a hybrid, because if you're an apartment or a condo, electric vehicles don't make sense. They don't work. And yet, we're doing these stories and we're showing that, no, they can totally work. A person living in an apartment or condo, okay, let's think about the 7-Eleven, the Canadian Tire, the Zayres, the En Route. There's a bunch of places that is just the start of where they can fast charge while they're maybe doing an errand, getting groceries, etc. So no, this totally can work, and this is great to see.
Yeah, that's an excellent point there, Ian. Believe it or not, you can't put a gas station anywhere. Gas stations have, you're basically putting these tanks with a toxic chemical in the ground, and you're creating an explosive gas environment. So there's actually there's rules around where you can put gas stations and where they can be placed and all that kind of stuff. But electric vehicle charging, they can be pretty much put in any parking lot where you have the power available. And because of that, now you can put them next to grocery stores. You can put them next to shopping malls. You can put them into a lot of different locations where people would normally spend a period of time. So this can work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So this is awesome to see. All right. This is another great article. And I remember, I think it was probably like a year ago, that we talked about the 40 electric vehicles in Canada that were for sale, and 2 years before that was maybe the 24, 25 electric vehicles, and now not only are we seeing more electric vehicles, but we're also seeing electric vehicles from other manufacturers. So VinFast, for example, who is, from what I understand, opening up a shop in Guelph of all places.
It's open.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, our options are becoming really cool now on this. And I think for anyone that is looking for an electric vehicle, this is a great article to shop and see what possibilities they have and what will meet their needs.
Yeah, I didn't want to comment too long on this. I wanted to add it as a resource for our members that could use this. So the link for this story, as well as all of our other stories, will be in the notes of this YouTube video. So you can go to that link and look up all the 50 cars that are available in 2023 in that list. And Ian's thrown up a few great photos of just some from the list, such as the pickup trucks, the Rivian, the Ford F-150, and the EV6, and I believe that's a Genesis in the
GV60.
It's a what?
Genesis GV60, yeah.
GV60 is the white one in the bottom right-hand corner. So not going to go through the list on this podcast, but it's there for a resource. If you would like to see all the different manufacturers and the models that are available, and as Ian had said, there's more being added to this list throughout the year. So this is not the only list. As time goes along, more will be added to the list. And of course, in 2024, we'll probably be doing the story about how 70 electric vehicles are available in 2024. So it's certainly growing. And this is a list that's up to date as of today.
And not just the list is growing, but the diversity of EVs that are being offered is also growing as well, too. Now we're seeing electric trucks. We're seeing some electric vans. Now with I think Kia just launched the EV9 recently, which is their 7-seat crossover. So lots of options on the market now too, to fit more people's needs and usage cases.
Yeah, for sure. The Genesis, when I saw that, I'm like, that's pretty cool looking. It's a neat looking vehicle. And I have to bring up the Rivian on the top right. About 2-3 weeks ago, an article came into my inbox, and I actually ended up using it for my sound design for 3D animation students. And it was Rivian, how they design the sounds in their vehicle. So when you go to do a turn, it's got like a wood block with a bird sound. And when you put the alarm on, normally you hear, like, especially in movies, you hear like boop, boop, And in this case, it almost made you question whether was that a bird or was that my alarm on the truck, because they're using that. And it was really cool. Like, they're really trying to integrate the sounds of the vehicle into nature, and good for them.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now we talk about this all the time. And of course, this gentleman, Sean Hart, we know in Windsor, who runs an association down there for electric vehicles, and he was featured on the CBC. And this is the thing. I think for most people, I don't like the title "If You Can Afford an EV," because no, if you can afford a car, especially a new car, you can afford an electric vehicle. There's some math there that a lot of times gets, a lot of people don't really look into that they should be. But this is a great article. And Sean, of course, has been driving electric for quite some time. And I like the fact, too, that this article showed that Sean wasn't driving one electric vehicle, but actually two. There are two electric vehicle household. And, there's a price difference between the two of them as well. So that kind of makes things interesting for the landscape of potential EV owners. You're not just, appealing to the higher end. You're actually getting down more in the middle range now too.
Yeah. So Sean has talked about the dollars and cents of total cost of ownership, and that's what, as we've talked many times through our association, that you have to look at the price of an electric vehicle at the upfront costs, but you also have to look at the maintenance and, of course, the fuel costs, the differences in those between a gas vehicle and an electric vehicle. So Sean did this interview with the CBC and went through the walkthrough of both of his vehicles, a Kia Niro and a Chevy Bolt, and talked about how it works within his family and how often they drive and what their electric bill is for driving that type of distance, and the savings that they have managed to achieve over a gas vehicle that they used to have. So this is again, it's another person that lives in our extended region that has been able to prove that over a number of years they've driven electric now, and it has not been a problem for them. And in fact, it's been a tool for that they've been able to save money when traveling the distances that they drive. And the other thing I do want to point out is that people who get an electric vehicle, the further you drive, the more savings there are. So if you're someone that is a salesperson that's driving on the roads a lot, the electric vehicle will save you buckets of money compared to a gasoline vehicle. It's quite the difference that just on fuel savings, let alone maintenance. So it's something to look into. And there's a number of different calculators on the market where you can put in your estimated mileage that you travel, and you can see the amounts that a typical gas car will get you, and compare that to a number of electric vehicles. So that's available for people. Just a quick Google search, you're able to come up with these type of things. So it's something, another example of someone that has made the switch and has presented some dollars and cents figures as to how it's benefited them.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're one of those people, poor unfortunate souls that have to drive from Kitchener to Toronto or something like that too, an EV is a perfect vehicle for that type of scenario to save a ton of money. Or, if you're stuck in traffic because there's a bunch of Canada Geese crossing the road, that could be a problem as well too, I've had the fortunate, I've been fortunate to host a number of, go down and be with a number of events with the Windsor EV Group, and Sean too. Sean's a really smart guy, and he knows his stuff. And I'm glad to see him getting highlighted in this article here. So it's good to see.
I brought this up a couple nights ago as well. The Volt had the pedestrian horn. We need a goose horn. Something along there, that would be great. Oh man. The other quick thing too is just the last point on this about car manufacturers are cutting the price of vehicles. So Tesla made a price cut, and then Ford has since gone into that, and this is just again making things that much easier for consumers to get into the vehicle. And honestly, every time I hear that whole like, oh, when the electric vehicle's on par price wise as the gas vehicle, then I'm like, then it'll be even more ultra cheap. Because when it's on par, at that point, it's a no-brainer. Which one you're going to choose? Because at that point, like you're saving money day one, the minute it goes off the lot, because you're not putting in the gas, you're not doing the oil changes, your brake jobs are nowhere close to the same on that aspect. And so this number of years before we kind of like break even in that, like that's all changing dramatically on that part of it. So all right, last couple of articles that we got here, and they're combined. And basically, if you drive an electric vehicle and you have a home, you're probably going to look into solar. If you have a home and you got solar, you're probably going to look into electric vehicle. And that's just becoming kind of hand in hand that much more so now. And but the interesting thing is, of course, our governments around the world are getting more involved with renewable energy and putting more and more renewable energy up. And it's interesting to see that, the 9.6 growth in renewables just last year, and, producing 3.3 gigawatts or 3.3 thousand gigawatts of power. It's amazing. And the one other thing about this article, it was that a lot of times we hear about, China as being a very polluting country and their emissions are so much higher, et cetera, but they're the largest contributor of 141 gigawatts with solar. And China is also a major contributor with the switch over to electric vehicles. So this country is not necessarily just sitting around on this as well. And of course, the largest rooftop solar array is this place for the factory Falcon Tires. I think that's how you say it, Falcon Tires, in Thailand. And it's covering 100,000 square meters, bigger than 10 American football fields, 40,000 solar panels. Like, that's just incredible. And could potentially power around, 2,700 US households. Now, the interesting thing about this, of course, with the technology and that I look at is like, in 12 years of really doing solar, between the first array I put up on my house and 210 watt panels, and then recently I just installed solar at a property in Mexico, and it's 530 watt bifacial panels, which are like not only half the price, or even less than half the price, but how much more power these are putting out. And, it's just going up and up. It's amazing how powerful solar is becoming. And then, of course, we couple this with battery technology. And our last podcast talked about that with the recent, Tesla gigabatteries that are being put into place. And we got some really cool stuff happening for our future energy.
Yeah, that's the march of solar has been incredible. Like you said, more than doubling of power, and reduction in price for each panel still on top of that. That means that if you had a system like you put in, Ian, how many panels was in your original system?
47.
Okay, so 47 would be cut in half, and you'd still get the same wattage out of it. So, that takes up less space on the roof, takes up less racking, takes less time. So installation costs go down as well. So, I can definitely see that renewables, especially solar, is something that will continue to grow. And once people like this group in Thailand understood that they've got this huge resource sitting above the buildings that they already own, the property's already there, putting up panels is a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and seeing the the costs of solar now and wind and how it compares to other generation sources, we're now seeing that solar and wind is now coming out cheaper than many other conventional generation sources such as coal, nuclear, natural gas. And so basically all we're doing is we're waiting for existing infrastructure to sort of age out, and as we replace and upgrade new infrastructure with the solar, wind, and then looking at means to tie that in with grid-tied storage solutions. So, there's basically the economic model is already there. It's just a matter of switching over and the infrastructure to do it. So,
yeah, as Ian's last slide showed, 83% of new sources of was 83% of all power capacity added last year were renewable sources. So as Eric mentioned, the price is just getting cheaper and cheaper, and it doesn't make any sense to burn something in order to produce electricity when the renewables are cheaper.
You might remember, I would say it's got to be somewhere between 3 and 5 years ago, where the president of India was being swayed back to kind of coal. And then the price of solar, they started researching that, and also it's like, well, wait a minute, no, this doesn't make any sense to kind of go back to the coal aspect. This is actually better. So they went back to the solar aspect of things, but that was about three to 5 years ago. And of course, now today, so much has changed even in the last 3 to 5 years with solar. Bifacial panels, I think in many respects, are almost replacing trackers, because what's the point of a tracker if you've got both sides collecting the power, and if it's set up properly, it can kind of do the same thing without having the mechanical aspect motor-wise. And then of course, 3 to 5 years ago, we were like dealing with panels that were around 350 watts. And of course, now we're dealing with 500 plus watts for these panels. So it is pretty incredible. All right. So there is our slides and our show for tonight.
Very good. So we thank you all for watching. If you can, please give us a thumbs up on the video. Press that subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we add a new video to this series of videos for WREVA. And with that, do you have any shoutouts this evening? Eric, anything from you?
Well, I'm just glad spring is here and that the baseball season is starting up. And I think the Jays might have an exciting team this year. So I'm looking forward to that. So.
Absolutely. Eric up in the snow belt, hoping that the snow melts much quicker than it has been. So, Ian, any shout-outs from you?
Well, Eric mentioned baseball, and I just looked to see, and the Leafs are tied. So spring's not quite here yet. They're on that cusp, right?
Oh, they're going to have their golf bags out soon, Ian. You know it.
You know what? I'm predicting Boston again is going to go all the way this year, because man, what a team they have! Like, it's incredible, that team. So, but you know what? I'm going to bring a couple of shout outs actually. One is, I just came across this article, is a Model Y owner has recently driven up to the Arctic Circle, and he has, of course, even the route that he's taken, the nearest gas station for part of the route is like 300 kilometers away. And so he did some pretty intriguing stuff where he was able to approach shop owners with mechanic shops and basically, see about charging up with, of course, probably their welding equipment, the plugs there. This isn't the first. I've seen this before with another Tesla owner like years ago who drove, I think, from probably Alaska down to Costa Rica. And this was a similar kind of pathway that he did as well. So kudos to that gentleman who did that. And he also did it. That's the other thing. He also did it in some pretty extreme cold temperatures as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
he did in the winter. Yeah.
Yeah. And great to see. So, and then I got to send a shout out to mi Mexicana amigos, who recently finished off probably 90% of the solar array for the property I've got down south. We put it up as a pergola. It's 10 530 watt bifacial panels. man, it was interesting because they used a crane to lift the main structure up onto the roof, and watching these guys navigate the tree, the house, everything to get this up was really cool. It looks awesome. They painted it really nice. It blends in with everything. And yeah, I'm basically thinking I'm not going to have a hydro bill in Mexico ever again. And I actually have a electric vehicle charger for it. I won a Tesla charger on an auction. Local auction actually, and going to probably take it down and do it up there. So anyways, it's just, again, we're all contributing to more of this whole electrification and proving that this can be done.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, with that, we want to thank everyone for watching this evening, this morning, this afternoon, whenever you're watching, and connect with us next time, and we will have more electrifying news for you. Thanks very much, everyone. Have yourselves a good evening.